the ones that are Toulon, and all in Europe, Lisbon, Oxford and Cambridge. And some people from Oxford and Cambridge in England got hip, came to America, started a college, they called it King's College. Today we call it Columbia. But we don't know that we are the seed mind of all these universities. We were aware of nuclear fusion. You can see it within the Moorish text, that they were aware of what would happen if you separated the nuclei of atoms, if you separated them, particularly the uranium one, which is number 92. This is why we need to know chemistry. See, this is more than just a notion. So when our children are sitting in schools and they're saying this is boring, why do I need to know this? There's a reason why they should know this. I demand mastery of my children when I'm not only my own personal biological children, but the children that I teach. Chemistry, biology, algebra, trigonometry, geometry, all that's important. My question is, but whose eyes are we looking at these subjects through? Because my problem is, I think the reason why we have a problem in the Board of Ed is that the students are heavier than the teachers. Because there's something that students have, that children have. They have an uncanny ability not to be able to tell an untruth. See, as an adults, we learn to lie just to make ourselves more comfortable, so that people won't be offended at us. But children don't have that. They have it, but they're very sensitive, but they don't have it within them. So that if a lesson is boring, they say, Mr. Coleman, that was kind of boring. An adult would say, well, you know, I like that one. That point you made back there, that point back there, the whole time they're lying. As children, you can't help but tell the truth, and that's one of the things that makes children so viable, and that's why I was blessed. Because unlike being a college professor, unlike being a high school teacher, which I began as, unlike being a junior high, I'm a kindergarten. I'm an early childhood, that's my license, is early childhood, kindergarten. And so I'm around children all day that, listen, if you want to be a kindergarten teacher, you better take drama. Because you better be able to act. You better be able to move into another personality. Because our children, you need to capture their imagination, and you need to keep it. And if you're boring, they're going to reject you. And I don't blame them, because I reject teachers too. I say, look, I was going to throw chalk at you. You were so boring. We've got to make that classroom more interesting. And in Africa and amongst Native American peoples, who are just as brown complexion and red complexion, there's another history that we've lost, the Native American. We are the Native American. If you look at the work of Harold Gladwin and you look at the work of Runoko Rashidi, they'll drop this information on you so that, you know, we were the only people on the planet for millions of years. Nobody looked like anybody but us. We may have been in different varying complexions, but the great majority of the gene pool was a very dark complexion people with very curly hair. Didn't even look really like me. I come from later developments. I'm talking about curly hair, what they call out in the street kinky hair. Wide nose and thick lip. That's the original human being. And if you want to find out where you came from, you go back there. The unfortunate thing, it seems like that model of what is the original human being is the one that is most denigrated. It's interesting that the closer you get to the original human being, the lesser in the social scale you get. That's the one you should be getting down thanking, because if they had given up, none of us would be here. The Twa people and the Mbuti people, the people we derogatorily call pygmy, they were here for millions of years. All of the different kinds of things that we're developing now thinking we're smart, they were doing the same things on their level back then. And if they weren't doing that back then, we would not be doing this right now. So we've got to pay respect to our ancestors who made it possible to bring us here. We've got to understand this phenomenon that we're facing. We have to look at the work of Francis Cress Welsing and look very closely at what genetic annihilation means. What does it mean? What does it mean to mean that you mutated out of a mutation of the original being? You're developing yourself in a hostile climate for thousands of years. Degrees freezing. I've been challenged. Last time I did this, I was challenged. They said, well, there's no such thing as minus 2,000 degrees below zero. That's the latest thing that they jumped on me for, but who cares? It was cold. And no matter how cold it was, it turned a black man into a white man, so something was going on up there. So it doesn't make a difference. You can be as petty as you want to on how cold it was. Just realize it was cold. This individual mutated itself, but there was a problem what this individual did when the Ice Age ended and the interstadial occurred, possibly 110,000 years ago, if you want to look at it like that. You see this warming of the earth. You see the ice is receding and the water's coming through. What you see is an individual that comes forward, not only physically changed, not only mentally changed, but spiritually changed. This person was nothing but a warrior, nothing but a barbarian. That's why I get a kick out of people using the word Berber, because the word Berber came out of the Africans that called the Romans that came in barbers, barbarians. That's why it was called the Barbary Coast. But this is history. This is not something we're making up. This is history. Berbers don't exist. Berbers exist like African Americans exist, like Arabs exist, and like Jews exist. They are a mixture of a people. The original is African, there's no question. The foundations are African. The language, the culture, the common sense is African. Wherever you go, that North Africa has an African flavor to it, including its music. These individuals come down warrior. Why? Because their environment was at war with them. And we did this in part two, because look at the psyche of an individual who grows around a tropical land where fruits are just dropping around all of you. It's dropping all around. When you need something to eat, you just go. You know. And it's something yearly, so you don't need a refrigerator. The reason why we have a refrigerator is because we've got to stock up because we're afraid it's not going to be there tomorrow. Because really, if you eat every day off the land, you don't need a refrigerator. A refrigerator is a caveman mentality. Africans don't need a refrigerator, except when you go to hotels, then you need it. But the mindset changes. So this individual that was in the ice and the cold, whose motto was, I don't have to be the fastest runner in the tribe. All I got to do is outrun at least 2 or 3 others. Because as you know, you did not have to outrun the bear. All you had to do was make sure your partner couldn't. This is the mentality of non-sharing. Amongst the African folk, if you needed something, of course I would give you. Because I knew that nature would give it back to me. Therefore, it became a natural. I'm not saying that everything was wonderful, that we didn't have our conflicts. Of course, human nature has conflict. But it wasn't the way of the world. When you go into Europe, you can see a set pattern of barbarism. It's not something I said. This is what their history says. This is what got me so interested in the Crusades, because of a 4-part video series that I saw on A&E, and it was called The Crusades, done by Terry Jones. Man, it did Second City or something like that, Second Circuit or whatever that was. It was a comedy coming out of Europe. And so he did a 4-part video, and this is what they're saying. When you look at the Crusades, you look at a phenomenon. When you look at the Crusades, you have to see that it was we who introduced the world to them. And every road that they took back to us was a road that we took to them. They didn't create no new exploration paths. That's why they kept getting lost on the sea, because they wouldn't listen to the directions that we gave them. Why? Because they weren't good navigators. Example, Christopher Columbus. He's either a very bad navigator or he's a very good liar. We, of course, know he's a very good liar. Because you don't have to be a good navigator to know if you're traveling east or west. Even a child knows, just look for the sun. By the next day, you know if you're traveling in the right direction, just by looking at where you are to the sun. And that's not even something a navigator needs to know. Children, I teach that to children. Just look at the sun. And when you get real good, you can even tell what time it is by where the sun is. So the Crusades were a group of individuals that were at war with each other. But before we do that, what I'd like to just do is to go back and forth between here and there. And what I want to do is talk to you about these maps. Because we brought the maps back so that you would be able to see a couple more things. The map here. First of all, what I want to look at is the spread of Christianity. Because that's going to be the first part to this. Please keep in mind that every faith system that you've got going has come out of the mind of an African head. An African person, whether it be Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, Confucianism, all comes out of the African mind. However, when Africans travel around the world as they do for millions of years, for thousands of years, upon a time when those that went into the northern Dr. Diop talked